Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Scuttlebutt. Before we dive into the episode, we are very proud to welcome and celebrate our first sponsor. D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage began as a small hauling and used auto parts operation in the Pittsburgh area in the late 1970s and has grown into a full-service metal recycling company with two locations, Lawrenceville and Tarentum. These are state-of-the-art scrapyards with deep roots in the community and a strong commitment to the service of their customers. D&D accepts all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at dndautosalvage.com. That's D&D autosalvage.com. Thank you, D&D, for supporting this podcast. And now, on with the show.
In middle school, I was living in Texas, and that was right around when the Furbies were really big. I saved up so much money because I wanted one, and I worked hard, and I got it. And then I was told I was not allowed to have it because Furbies had a recording device and they weren't allowed on military posts as a result. That memory and that fury of not being able to get that just because my dad was in the Army has stuck with me.
Furby!
Furby!
Welcome, everyone, to the Scuttlebutt. Super excited for you guys to join us this week as we are back from our break, and we are here to honor the month of the military child. The Scuttlebutt, this podcast was created to serve the mission of the Veterans Breakfast Club, to create communities of listening around veterans, to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. We are going to dive in today and talk about military brats, which I just recently found out is not a derogatory comment, which I'm very happy about. But if you would be so kind, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you are the first to know whenever we release our episodes. Joining me today are a couple really wonderful guests and somebody new, but I'm going to have us go around the room and introduce ourselves. Ryan, I always have you say something new because we've had you on for a while. So Catherine, you as well. So Ryan, you got to tell us something new about yourself.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm an Army veteran and an aspiring TikTok star.
Oh, we're going to dive into that too. We got some wonderful stuff coming up for this audience. Catherine, anything new about you that we don't already know?
Well, I'm a wife, mom, news anchor, proud, I always say this, and I have to, again, proud granddaughter of a World War II veteran, and not the proud owner of a TikTok, but happy to chair Ryan's campaign as the future TikTok star. Hashtag Ryan the influencer.
We're going to pop that up. Hashtag Ryan the influencer. And joining us for the first time is Jessica Garda. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Jess Garda, longtime listener, first time caller. I've enjoyed listening to the Scuttlebutt and happy to be here. I am a Army brat. I am a wife and a mom of two girls. And I am a fundraiser turned event planner turned balloon artist. Thank you, pandemic. And that's in a nutshell.
What is the name of your balloon business?
It doesn't quite have a name yet.
Ooh, that might be a challenge by the end of this episode that we find out a title. But we will definitely share the website here. So if you are listening or if you are watching on YouTube, we will post a link to Jessica's balloon business, which is incredible. These designs are wonderful and they were great for any occasion. Am I right, Jess?
Yeah. It's amazing the kind of requests I have gotten. It's been a lot of fun.
Would you like to share one that like sort of out there?
I have for graduation, he's going to college on a soccer scholarship. And so I am making a life-size balloon sculpture of her son as a soccer player.
Incredible.
I'm really excited for this.
Incredible. Well, as we said, Ryan is is a TikTok star. You may remember from several weeks ago, we had Ryan on talking two different things. One, he was roasting the Hurt Locker, and rightfully so. And in another, we talked about the 10th Mountain Shoot House fail. And both of these, VBC decided, you know what, we're going to put Ryan on the spotlight, and we are going to create two TikToks that we are going to play here for you. So if you're listening on audio, jump over to YouTube, watch these TikToks. The first one, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Once I pull this up, Ellie will. Okay. First up, Ellie's going to edit this in. Here we go. First up is going to be Ryan's TikTok of the 10th Mountain Shoot House fail. This has received over 25,000 views on TikTok. I see you shaking your head, Jess, and I agree with you. Really? This received 25,000 views? But Ryan got some roasting for this.
20.
Now, that is a question I have. At what point do you say the video is viral? Is it 10,000, 20,000? Is it 1 million?
Is there a metric?
Right here, yeah.
Ryan, would you say that you are a viral star?
No, I don't think so. I think it's got to get shared or noticed by somebody real famous. Like if Snoop Dogg had commented on my TikTok, then I'd know I'd made it. But until that happens, I'm just a small fish in a big pond.
This is message word out to Snoop Dogg. Please comment on this TikTok. But we're gonna give it a watch here, just so you guys could see what we created here at the BBC.
Is this mouth? I mean, somebody must have seen too much John Wick. You need to get out of the barracks. What's this guy doing with his arm cocked up on the side? You should be more worried about hitting your points of domination than trying to look cool. I don't want to Monday morning quarterback this for you, but your squad mates are not the enemy, so stop pointing your gun at them. You think you're some kind of operator? You're not. The only thing you should be operating is a broom, a mop, a bucket, and a floor buffer, okay? Additionally, was it really necessary to shoot every target like 100 times, okay? Because the last thing you want to be doing in a situation like this is reloading, all right? 2 in the chest, 1 in the head, and move on, young man. You are a no-go at this station.
That might be my favorite spot. You are a no-go at this station. So I'm going to stop share, but you received a little bit of ribbing here in the comment section. Abel L. Ray says this is their first time going through the training, so take a chill pill, man.
You don't know that, Abel. You have no idea how many times they've been through there. And regardless of whether it's their first time or not, somebody should have stopped that training for safety's sake.
And the second TikTok that we are going to show is the one from the Hurt Locker. This one I love because I actually really liked the Hurt Locker. Sorry, that was a movie that I saw the first time and thought this is incredible, and I'm so on the edge of my seat. But then hearing Ryan talk us through this scene, it gave me a second point of view for what this movie is.
Launching rounds downrange at these bad guys, and somehow I guess the enemy sniper just forgot how to shoot because he just killed 2 guys in your exact location, and you're just going to sit there and have a shoot off with them. So not only did it not make tactical sense, it didn't make common sense. Like, would any 3 of you who just watched 2 people get shot then go set the gun in the exact same location and be like, I can take this guy? Like, no big deal. These 2 guys just got shot 30 seconds ago. And you're like, I'm just going to sit up in the exact same spot and start shooting at this guy with a gun I've never used. And by the way, get some spit on these rounds because there's blood on them and it's jamming up the rounds. Like,
wonderful work, Ryan. Thank you for bringing attention to the Veterans Breakfast Club. Johnny Rockefeller had something to say about this. He said in the comments, dude, it's a movie. No war movie has ever been accurate. Which someone did respond to him and say, Jarhead is pretty accurate. So
I feel like this is like the Scuttlebutt version of, Jimmy Fallon's mean tweets, where celebrities go on and read mean tweets. So when Ryan finally goes viral and we have hashtag Ryan the influencer, then we'll come back on and do like Scuttlebutt mean tweets.
So, which I would love, because I love a good roasting, even if it's against me. I have friends, and if you read our group texts to each other, you would think we weren't even friends. Like, we're so mean, and it's almost inappropriate most of the time. But yeah, so I'm all for it. Like, it's a good time. One of the comments I saw about that Hurt Locker video was somebody get this guy a juice box. And just that was so funny.
Well, Anon's page said, bet this guy thinks Marvel movies are fake. So that was one of my favorites there.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I love it. But that is our mail call. Anytime that we're able to talk about something, some comment that was made on either our YouTube channel, on the Scuttlebutt audio, on a TikTok that we're a part of, we love calling them out. So please check us out and leave a comment, because we love to bring those up. One segment I'm going to pop over to is that something we haven't come back to in a couple weeks is where in the world is the U.S. military? We've been following a Smithsonian map that showed a bunch of U.S. bases around the world. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so that you all can see it. This is the one that we've all been talking about here on the Scuttlebutt. We were sort of breaking down in different countries why there would be military activity. I believe the last one we did was the Diego Garcia, which was an island down here in the Indian Ocean, a beautiful place that is like a resort, and you wouldn't believe it, but there's actually an airfield there and a base. It's the only place that I would ever want to be deployed. But I bring up this because recently the USA Today decided to release, I believe, an updated map. And I'm going to pull that website here and share my screen again so that everyone can jump over to this if they would like to have more information as to where the US is. Now, this is on usatoday.com. You could probably Google search that and look up US counterterrorism operations. That's the title of the article. The US counterterrorism operations touched 85 countries in the last 3 years alone. I'm going to scroll down through. And the really great thing about this website and this report is that they actually bring in a timeline to show us where bases and activity have expanded across the planet, all the way up until 2020, excuse me, 2020. And that's military bases, small military installations. You can scroll down and find out how much has been spent on the military. This all is data from the U.S. Department of Defense. So this is all fairly legit. Beyond the battlefield, closer look at the number of U.S. military and civilian personnel deployed around the world. You get a lot of really good information from this website. So I was really happy to bring up that map and that website here on the Scuttlebutt. If you want more information about what's going on with the military, where they're at around the world, where they're deployed, where our bases are, it's a really wonderful resource. We will post it here underneath the video on YouTube. And so make sure to definitely check it out. On to our main event. Our main event tonight is Month of the Military Child. I wore purple. So did Catherine, I believe. And our two guests that are
military children.
You guys are wearing green, that's fine. But purple, I guess, is the color of Month of the Military Child, where they actually do a day called Purple Up Day, which is on Thursday, April 15th this year. So we are wearing purple in honor of that. But the first thing I wanted to bring up was the phrase of the day, which is military brat. And I admit I had to Google, is military brat a derogatory comment? I didn't want to come on the podcast and say military brat and have everybody look at me. But from what the definition I found was, the term military brat is a badge of pride worn by generations of kids who traveled the world with their parents, moving into adulthood with the knowledge that they have the strength to handle anything. Military children deal with separations, deployments, frequent moves, and even their parents' injuries as part of the life they were born into or entered with their families.
Well, I just recently found out it wasn't derogatory, because, you just look at the term brat, like if your kid's being bad, like, oh, you're such a brat, but I thought it was a bad thing too. So I'm glad that we kind of cleared that up, because you and I can't be the only ones that thought that was a bad thing. But then hearing you read that, I mean, maybe it's something I know I never really thought about it. Like, military children, they go through a lot, especially if they're moving and all that. So I'm glad that I now know that that's an affectionate term.
I've never heard any other term.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just, I can't think of anything. Like, you can say military dependent, but
it doesn't have a nice ring to it.
For the bravado of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that whenever I'm like, you're going around in a circle and you have to tell people a little bit about yourself, one of the first things I always say is, I'm an Army brat. Like, I grew up an Army brat. Like, it says so much about the way I grew up and what I experienced, the good and the bad. I love it.
Do you find that civilians who hear you say that, when you're like, in the circle, we've all been in the circle, tell us a bit about yourself, you say that, do you feel like they kind of look at you like, what does that mean? Or do you have to explain it a little further?
I sometimes do. I guess it kind of depends. I mean, some people aren't really exposed to that term. So I will kind of say, like, I'm an Army brat. I grew up, my dad was in the Army. I've been all over the place. Like, it's kind of all in this little package that I deliver to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it depends. I know with my husband, he didn't grow up with, like, military parents, but his second cousin. So, like, he's familiar with it. So I think, like, even if people are partially removed from it, they'll understand it. But the through and through civilians, as it were, they need a little explaining.
So Jess, how old were you when your father got out of the Army?
College. So he served 83 to 2005. So he had been in the Army for 3 years before I was born. And then halfway through college is when he retired. And he still works for the NSA. So he's still kind of part of all of it. Yeah. So, but that was my whole life. Yeah.
Was your dad like from Western PA? Is that how you ended up in Pittsburgh?
No, actually. So my dad was mainly Northern Virginia. He was born in Maine. My parents met in Northern Virginia. I was born in Northern Virginia. I came to the Pittsburgh area because it was out of state for college, but my aunt was here. So it was like the compromise between me wanting to get out of there and my parents wanting someone close by. So yeah, I moved here in 2004 to the Pittsburgh area for college. I tried to move back to the DC area for a little bit, but by then I was already dating my now husband.
Mm-hmm.
So I settled here in this area. Yeah.
what was did you ever get sent overseas with your dad? Was he ever stationed overseas?
Oh yeah. We were stationed twice in Germany. So when I was in like the early 90s, we were in Ansbach and lived there. And then a little later on, we were in Wiesbaden. So those were the two overseas experiences. When we were in Wiesbaden, my dad was deployed to Bosnia for Operation Joint Endeavor. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then the rest of that was just.
How old were you? How old were you when he was deployed?
Oh gosh, for that stint, I was still elementary school. I was still like 4th and 5th grade.
And how long was he gone?
On and off. He was a couple times deployed.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember like him leaving and being gone for a long time and like missing him and all that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we were in Germany, so it's already like a completely new environment. And then he was deployed to Bosnia. I do remember some of it. Again, so my dad was very adamant about keeping a separation between the Army life and the family life. I mean, even though, of course, the Army life was going to affect family life because we would have to transplant, but he didn't want to share, I think, especially because I was his daughter, he didn't want to share too much of what was going on for some of those. But yeah, he was gone a lot for that. Plus, he'd have to go to Russia for training. He was a Russian translator. So he would have to actually go and get refreshed courses and all of that too. So it was an on and off again sort of thing, especially when we were living in Germany. Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, Jessica, you mentioned something that I'm like super curious about when I found out we were talking about this topic is like the adjustment. So, you're a kid or like, at various stages of your life, you're going through different issues that are hard enough on children and even teenagers when you're in one place, but then you're also adjusting to maybe like a new culture or a new location. Like, what is that transition like, and how often were you moving? Because the constant change, that has to be difficult to adjust to, right?
I mean, I was perpetually the new kid at school, perpetually.
Yep.
Now, places like Germany and those places, that was easier because we were living on base with other military families. We were going to Department of Defense schools with other military. So we already had like an instant bonding of like, we all kind of got it. Where it got rough, this was like some of the places we were stationed in the States. Like I remember, so after Wiesbaden, we were stationed at Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas. And that was middle school. So middle school's already rough. Then I'm the new kid. Then I'm the new blonde haired girl from Germany. There were names thrown around, let's just say. So it was rough. Kind of always having to adjust and be the new kid. I mean, we moved around every 2 to 3 years.
I was going to say that because I have a stat here that most military families move every 2 to 3 years, and some even more frequently. And for a military child, it's possible to have moved 10 times by the time they're 12, and to change schools 6 to 9 times between kindergarten and high school graduation.
That's a big thing too. So even like we would move, and if housing wasn't readily available on base, we'd have to find temporary housing off base, and I would end up going to whatever school we were in the district of. And then as soon as housing was available on base, we'd move on base and go to that school. So even if, like when I moved to the DC area, I still went to 2 different schools within a matter of, 3 months within moving there. So it was just a lot of flux. Nothing very stable. And I still get that feeling. I've been here in this Pittsburgh area since 2004, and I still wake up some mornings going, I should start packing. It's so strange.
So one of the other challenges of switching schools all the time, other than like making new friends, right, or having to make new friends, like you get kind of a little better at it, but like one of the challenging things is, especially in the United States, when you're not going to a DoD school, is that a lot of the times the grade work is building on like your previous year, right? So they expected that they knew that you knew what they taught last year, right? So like, but that doesn't happen. So then like, they're like, okay, well, last year we talked about, the American Revolution, and now we're going to talk about, 19th century America. I think I never, what was funny was like especially in English classes, like when, oh, you should have read this book last year. Like, well, no, I didn't, like there were just some things that like I never experienced in the American education system, which was really kind of it threw you for a little bit of a loop.
No summer reading list for you, Ryan.
Did you have to take classes that were like a grade lower as a result of it? Like if you moved and ended up having to take, like you're a 9th grade and you had to take 8th grade or something like that?
No, I never had to do that. But there was definitely some challenges, especially when like you go to high schools and middle schools in different countries. Like it's completely like one of the places my dad got stationed was actually in Canada, and then going up there and like you're being given this exam on Canadian history, and in America and in almost every other country, we don't talk about Canadian history at all. Well, I had to learn it. Like, why Quebec is like Quebec, and how Manitoba is also full of French Canadians and wanted to secede from the Union. Like, no, I don't know. How does anybody else know that? But I had to know it. Very,
And Ryan, you were an Air Force brat.
Yeah. Yep. My dad was in the Air Force for a little over 20 years. And unlike Jess, my dad got out right when I was about a sophomore in high school. So it was like still counted for like one more move, because you got like 2 years of school left. So I went, we moved back to Western PA because that's where my dad was from. But that was my 3rd high school. So I went to a high school in California when he was stationed in Air Force Base out there. The one in Canada, he retired. Yeah, he got a job at there's a Air Force Base in Winnipeg. That's why the hockey team is called the Jets.
I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Yeah, so there's a big Air Force base in Winnipeg, and then he retired, and we came back to Western PA. Yeah.
Catherine, did you ever switch schools?
No, not only like for, like the natural progression. So I was a Catholic school kid. So I went to the same school from preschool through 8th grade, and then went to the Catholic high school with the same group of kids in a different building mixed with like 2 other schools. So that's why like I'm sitting here trying to fathom how you change schools every couple of years with a whole new group of friends, because I have literally known the same kids and I'm still friends with some of the kids that I went to preschool with. So like this is way over the realm for me. I just can't fathom how you guys did that.
I know
Yeah.
I switched schools between I think it was 7th grade and 8th grade. And that was such a difficult time because at that point, everybody has sort of already had the cliques are established. So I thought I'm going to go in and join the football team and I'll make friends. And boy, that was a mistake. Uh, and at this point, I don't actually talk to anybody from the high school that I moved to because I never really developed the friendships. Now I still talk to people from my first school before we moved because I had known them for several years before we moved. And we only moved, this move was, 20 minutes up the road to a different school district, not across country or across, to a different country. So I'm with you, Catherine, like this idea of I'm going to develop new friendships every couple years and have to reestablish myself and then figure out like what the social, norms are in this school. Who do I fit in with? And do I even want to? Like that's, I think maybe my next question is, did you want to make new friends knowing that we're probably going to move in 2 or 3 years?
I mean, well, of course, yeah, you wanted to have some friends around, but I think one of the like every kid deals with it differently, and I think Jess is absolutely right. Like going to the DoD schools was easy because you do have that common bond. It was coming to like the U.S. schools that was hard, right? Because there are those cliques already established. But yeah, you definitely you try to make new friends. And what's funny is like you kind of get this resiliency that like if it doesn't work out this time, I guess I'm moving in 2 years, so it won't be that bad for that long, right? Like because I had like one in particular really bad experience where I made almost no friends and just not have a good time. But you also just you learn to just be yourself and just you don't have to put on fronts because also you also have that to fall back on that if these people don't like you, well, that's too bad because you're not going to be around that long, right? So but at the same time, I think that's what I personally took away from it was just just be yourself because you can't really change that, and people are going to like you for who you are, and sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't.
Did you feel like, I think a lot of people mature at different rates. You say like, be yourself and you could be confident in that. Did you find that you were able to find that faster growing up in a military family and be able to establish that sense of self earlier and not have to like, be like mining friends as much as possible?
I don't know about like finding my sense of self a little earlier. I think it just builds up a resiliency in you. I think like that you're because you're still a kid and you're still growing. You still have a whole host of insecurities that's going on, especially with moving all the time. But I do think it helps build up that resiliency that like change is okay and change is normal, and that you can get through some of these more difficult times because you've kind of been through hectic times before, and you get exposed to a lot of different things, which is cool. A lot of different types of people, lots of different cultures. My dad loved overseas assignments, so we were overseas in a couple of really crazy places like China and Italy and Albania.
Wow.
So it was like so you get exposed to a little more. So it takes a little bit more to blow you away, right? You're like, I just remember like I'm not that intimidated of you, dude. Like I don't care if you're the big guy at this tiny high school, okay? Like let's just you want to hang out? Like you don't have to beat me up. You don't have to beat me up to prove you're stronger than me. Like I'll be your friend. So
well, like we've been talking a lot about education, like how it impacts your book smarts, I guess, but there's also like the social aspect that we talked about. Well, what about I guess we'll call it like worldly education or cultural education. Like you guys probably got something that a lot of kids didn't. And I know me, like I never left the country until I was 29 years old, I think. And I went to Canada, which is like 5 hours away. So I don't really, and it was just Niagara Falls. So I really like wasn't out of the country. But I mean, you guys got that worldly education probably that a lot of kids didn't. Because I mean, I don't know people that are going and living in other countries and experiencing like a little bit of different cultures or different places. Like, I mean, some people don't even travel out of the state that they came from, that they were born in. So
Yeah.
I will say that, like, people ask me a lot about living in Germany, and while I have some great experiences on the whole, I feel maybe just because I was younger when I was overseas, I don't feel like I really got immersed in the culture because I'm living on base. You know, I'm shopping at the PX. I'm going to a DoD school. I'm like very isolated in a lot of ways from the culture. That was my personal experience there, is that like I was living in an American oasis in the middle of Germany. But then I still got some great experiences, like, you know, touring the Rhine and doing summer camp where I played like tag on the, you know, between Austria and Germany, like on the border, like actual border tag
in the Alps,
stuff like that. I remember visiting Czechoslovakia one week and the Czech Republic the next, like, because that was the first time we were stationed there, was during the Velvet Divorce. So I get to say some cool stuff like that as an adult now, but as a kid then, I don't think I really fully understood what was going on.
Maybe it depends on your age. Like maybe kids that are a little bit older may like get a little more from that, you know? But I mean, like, it's cool to look back on. I mean, the memories, if nothing else, are just, that's awesome.
Ryan, when were you stationed in or when was your dad stationed in China?
I was like 7 or 8.
Okay.
And then I was a teenager when he was in Albania. And that was kind of crazy. I was born when he was in Italy, but and some of the other places we visited, I think the number one takeaway was that you know, we do have it really good here in America, right? There are people who really do live in very, you know, bad socioeconomic conditions, and it really gives you an appreciation for what we have here and just the things we take for granted every day, like functional highways or traffic lights, or, you know, grocery stores that have food in them all the time, like just things like that like there are so many people in the world who don't know where their next meal is coming from, or there's no safety regulations on the roads, and you know, things like that happen. I think that was probably like one of the biggest takeaways, because like not only did my dad enjoy overseas assignments, he really liked to pick like really crazy ones. So like Albania was like nuts, right? We actually got evacuated from Albania at one point because the whole country was like going up in flames.
Wait, hold on. There's too much to dive into with that, especially you said you were a teenager when you guys were in Albania?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like 13, 14 years old.
Okay, so this leads me to a couple different questions, but the first one being is that, you know, both of your dads were in the military. So obviously there was some understanding that dad was going off to risk his life in a way. Now, in this particular incident, you guys were evacuated from Albania. And how terrifying was that for you as a kid?
Well, for me, wanting to be in the military and being a teenage boy, I was like, this is awesome, right? The Marines come in, they're flying in on helicopters, right? You're driving, you're getting speeded down the highway to the embassy, and, you know, getting spirited off onto the USS Nashville to get evacuated, flying on a, you know, Marine helicopter with a bunch of Marines. And I was like, this is so cool. But basically what happened was it was a brand new democracy. The communist dictator Enver Hoxha had died just a few years earlier. It was their first take at democracy. They didn't quite understand capitalism, and basically it was a whole big Ponzi scheme, and everybody with all the money left, and the whole economy collapsed. So the country just started rioting, and so all the women and children got evacuated, and it was pretty crazy experience. Yeah.
Jess, you know, your dad he's in Desert Storm. He goes to Bosnia. Was there, we had talked about you missing him, but did you know dad's in a dangerous place and he might not come back?
I mean, with Desert Storm, I was definitely too young. And with Joint in Denver, I kind of understood some of it. I was watching the news, but I don't think I fully, like I said, my dad and so my mom as well were very protective of us in what they told us. So a lot of what I know about my dad's life in the army, I didn't learn until a few years ago, honestly, until I had kids of my own.
We chatted before we started recording, Jess, about 9/11. You know, your dad was in throughout that time. And you said that you were on base and you guys weren't even told what was going on that day. Is that right?
We had just moved to Alexandria area 2 months beforehand.
Mhm.
We were still living off base in civilian housing, waiting for on base housing to open up. So I was in a completely different school. My dad, from what we knew, was supposed to have a meeting at the Pentagon. And I remember that because, like, for us, that was like so exciting. He's going to the Pentagon. And then all of this happened. He did not go to the Pentagon, but he was working in his office at Fort Belvoir, which went on complete shutdown. So we could not get a hold of him. Plus, the school where I was going at, they made the decision not to let any of the students know what was going on. So we know something bad happened, but we didn't know what. And rumors were going around like crazy. And we just had to wait. I mean,
Mhm.
the school buses weren't even allowed to come pick us up. We all had to be picked up individually by parents or relatives. So we had no idea what was going on. We didn't know where my dad was. And finally, like late that night, he got home and we all reunited and we all figured out what's happening. Yeah, that was a scary day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, for everyone, it was a lot of chaos. Yeah, and a lot of uncertainty.
Mhm. And I'm sure
That's
even
hard,
me.
like, to process, and I'm sure other people listening to this will have the same reaction to this as I do, because like I remember being a kid with those same feelings, but like my family had no connections with the military at that point. Like for me, New York City may as well have been like, you know, 3 worlds away for what I knew at that age. But like I can't imagine trying to process that as a kid with a parent that could have been potentially in danger or like their lives put in danger as a result of like what would be to come. Because I am rarely speechless in my life, but like thinking about that kind of makes me a little bit speechless.
Did your school share what was happening? Because I remember talking to my husband and he talks about his history teacher turning on the TV so they could all watch
No,
news. I'm like,
no.
that's
So this,
horrifying.
yeah. So I will never forget this day because I was sitting in class and I can still to this day see like the chalkboard and the classroom decorations. And we knew something was happening. And I went to a Catholic school. So they got over the intercom and said, let's say a prayer. Something happened. You're not in danger here. Everything's fine. Well, then like everybody left to right from the office would be intercom in and say like, so-and-so's parents are here to pick them up. And I'm like, oh, why aren't my parents picking me up? Right. And then you go home, and I was in 6th grade at the time. And so I was old enough to kind of understand. And then you go home and you're starting to watch the news. And like my parents were trying to keep me away because you're still, you know, fairly young at that point. But I'm looking, and then it was my dad's birthday. So we're like, they're trying to keep it normal and we're singing happy birthday. But like my parents think this is awful and are looking at it. And I think it, you know, took a while for even them to realize, and I'm sure like so many other people felt the same way, like how do you explain this to your kids, you know? Which is why I can't even imagine, like it had no, I was lucky in that regard that that day had no impact on my circle of people. Like I didn't lose anybody. Nobody I loved would go be deployed as a result of that. So I can't imagine trying to process that, knowing that it could affect my immediate circle, you know?
Mhm. You know, that's one side of it, is knowing that your parent is going to potentially be in danger and sort of afraid for their life in a way. But is there another side to this, being in a military family? Did you ever, Jess or Ryan, did you guys ever feel resentment to your parents or your dad for you know, you're all over the place, you know, and you feel jealousy of the kids who just got to be at one school like Catherine? Ryan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I went through like, you know, ups and downs, but there was, you know, like I was saying, you know, when you're a kid and you're full of these insecurities and you're having to change all the schools all the time and you don't get to, you it's kind of like it's a pretty big human nature thing, right? Is like the grass is always greener, right, in somebody else's lawn, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you'd give anything just to be like, why can't I just go to one school and have a house that's where I grow up, and then that's where I always lived, and you do have sort of a sense of like jealousy of kids and families that have that sense of stability. As I got older, I kind of started appreciating what it was more. Um, what the things that I had gotten to do. It was also, bonus icebreaker when you're the new kid in school, right? Like, where are you coming from? Oh, someplace crazy, tell us, learn about that. But yeah, there was definitely some resentment a little bit, especially when I was a little younger, having to move all the time. Yeah.
Jess?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially those middle school years, you're a middle school girl and you, you're suddenly having to move away from friends and sometimes you're wondering what's the point of making friends when you're going to be gone in 2 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it'd be difficult. And of all the random things, one thing I do remember like having like I could like really rage about in middle school. I was living in Texas, and that was right around when the Furbies were really big.
Mm.
Here's the thing. I saved up so much money because I wanted one, and I worked hard and I got it. And then I was told I was not allowed to have it because Furbies had a recording device and they weren't allowed on military posts as a result. And I don't know why, but that memory and that fury of not being able to get that just because my dad was in the army has stuck with me.
This is our next TikTok viral video.
Furby!
If anybody would like to send Jessica a Furby, her address is. No, I'm just kidding.
So I finally was able to have one under stipulations, and those things were creepy, and I threw it across the room. I almost burnt that thing. So in the end, I guess
it all worked out.
It worked out, but that seriously is the reason it sticks in my head is just because it was something that everyone else was getting to experience, and I couldn't because of my dad's occupation.
Mm-hmm. We've talked on this podcast a lot about how a lot of people that go into the military are from military families. Ryan, you're shining example of that. I do have a question for you about that in a second, but Jess, I want to ask you first is, your dad was in the military. Did you ever consider the military, and did he ever sort of prompt you and say, hey, you should join the army, you should join military?
No, actually, most of what I got from him was kind of the exact opposite, that he didn't want me going into it. Now, again, this was, when I was coming of age was very fresh post 9/11. So
right,
having his baby girl make that change, like that was not going to be a thing. So I can't say that I ever really entertained that idea, nor was it encouraged. But certain values definitely were, and being able to handle my firearms, that sort of thing. But no, I have to say that was not, even though my dad's dad was, in the Air Force and my mom's dad was in the Marines, it definitely was a family tradition, but they did not want to see their girl going into it.
Brian, bouncing off this idea of like, yeah, at times you feel a bit resentful of it. Did that ever weigh on your mind now that you have a family, you have a daughter, you're in the Army, you obviously have been able to plant yourself here in Western PA. But did it cross your mind when you were getting into the military, like, I might have to put my family through this?
Yeah, for sure. It did. I've kind of like started to gear down, right? I'm kind of like short timing right now. And I just joined a training unit, which, we train people to deploy. And my wife was super happy because, this unit doesn't deploy, right? The whole, this type of unit trains and evaluates people who are getting ready to deploy. But it's, it does weigh on you a little bit. Like just being like right now, I'm away for military training, and there's still an obligation to be away. And you miss your wife, you miss your kids, you miss your family, you miss your friends. But overall, I think the military has given me more than it's taken. That's for sure. But when people ask me like, do I want my daughter to join the military? That is a tough one. And I don't know if it's like what Jess experienced, which is like a daddy daughter thing, right? Like, but I don't think I would be against my daughter joining the military. But we'd have some real serious talks about it. Like this is what it really is, and what are you going to do, and what's going to be the best thing to meet and I would want to make sure that she didn't have any misaligned expectations about what it was going to be and what it is. I would really try to paint for her a very accurate picture of what the good and the bad is, because there are both. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity and you can get a lot of, stuff out of it, but it's tough to be like, yeah, go ahead, young girl. I mean, yeah, I know you can do it, but I don't want to think about all those, terrible things you're gonna have to go through. Like, that and possibly terrible things that could happen to you. Yeah, it's tough, but I think that's all part of like, growing up and letting your daughter or kids in general just be their own person. So if she wants to, but I don't think I'm gonna like prompt her or be like, you got to join. But if she wants to, I would definitely like support her if it was definitely something she really wanted to do.
All of us here on the Scuttlebutt today all have kids. My daughter is 15 months old. Jessica, you have two daughters. What are their ages?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. Catherine?
He is 13 months.
13. Ryan, your daughter is the oldest, I think, of the group.
4.5. Yeah.
4.5.
It's a sass monster. So much sass.
She takes after her dad like that.
I guess so. She's roasting me nonstop. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
Those comments on TikTok are from her.
That's
probably.
Right.
She probably knows how to use TikTok better than I do.
And I think that's something that we can all sort of understand in this idea of like, holding my daughter before I come down and start recording on the podcast, and wanting to protect her from the world, and knowing that eventually she's going to say, I want to do this thing, and it's like, okay, I know I have to support you and I want to prepare you and educate you as best I can, but you're going to live your life. And I'm sure that Jess and Ryan, both your dads, were probably thinking the same thing as much as they were deployed and in areas of danger where they just wanted to get back to their family. Well, this has been really incredible. And I was so excited to do Month of the Military Child, which I do find a kind of an interesting title. They couldn't call it Military Child Month. They call it Month of the Military Child. So I just needed to mention that.
Why can't they call it Month of the Military Brat?
See, there's our other hashtag, Month of the Military Brat.
Claim that term.
But I do
That'll be a Scuttlebutt trademark.
That's true. Month of the Military Brat. I want to run through some numbers here as we wrap up this segment, just so people that are listening can get a good idea of how many military brats are out there and what they deal with. So according to a report by the Department of Defense, there are 700 military child development program facilities around the world, running approximately 155,000 childcare spaces with another 3,000 family childcare homes. Approximately 2 million military children have experienced a parental deployment since 9/11. There are currently 1.2 million military children of active duty members worldwide. Nearly 80% of military children attend public schools throughout the United States. It was something I definitely wouldn't have thought of. The average military family moves 3 times more often than their civilian counterpart, and there are nearly 2 million total force dependent children, including more than 900,000 Army dependents, 400,000 Air Force dependents, nearly 300,000 Navy, and approximately 118,000 Marine dependents. And I'm sure the number for space dependents will go up, which I do love the term space brats. On to our final segment of the day. We have our Scuttlebutt round, which we also have been sort of lax on over the last couple episodes, but I'm happy to bring it back. Great article here from Task and Purpose. It is titled No Easy Day in Whoville, Goodnight Boom, and Other Potential Titles for Admiral William McRaven's new children's book. His actual book is titled Make Your Bed with Skipper the Seal. Well, they didn't think that was that fun, so a lot of active duty decided to submit their own titles, and I just want to run down the list of a couple of that were brought up. One fish, two fish, red fish, we blew a hole in your compound, wallfish. Everyone dies. That's why we have seals. The very hungry military working dog. The Tango, the Hilo, and Cairo, the working dog. One shot, two shot, headshot, you shot. Oh, the places you'll hide from the U.S. military. One seal, two seal, red squadron, gold squadron. Curious Rob O'Neill, the curious seal. Good Night Moon and Hello Night Vision. Good Night Boom. I love that one.
That's a good one.
Big Bad Abadabad. I just love saying that. Big Bad Abadabad. Everybody Shoots, the story of the Bin Laden raid. Oh. Didn't say that these were PC. And the last one, definitely not PC, and I won't use the actual term, but go the F to sleep.
I was just thinking that.
That's what every parent wants to read their kids when they won't go to bed. I'm just going to say it. We're all thinking it. We all have small children.
Exactly right. Ryan.
I mean, like the conversation. So once they get a little older, right? Like, and they can start talking and they have a vocabulary and they can express their needs to you. But what happens is after they get to that age now, yeah, I can understand what you want, but the problem is what you want doesn't make any damn sense. Like, you know, that's what happens with a 4.5-year-old. You're just like, just go to sleep.
I want my blue cup. And I want it upside down on my nightstand, but I still want water in it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm at the simple age where it's just like milk, bink, done.
Yeah.
You know?
Mine's
After
at the
crying, of course.
What's that, Ryan?
After all the crying, of course.
Mm-hmm. One more for the road. Everyone poops their pants when special operations forces arrive. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the special military family edition of the Scuttlebutt. Super excited that you were all able to come and join us for another episode. Remember to like, share, subscribe, ring that bell on YouTube, download, and definitely leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be back for a 2-part series coming up after the military family episode. We are also going to be honoring Sexual Assault Awareness Month and talking with Dr. Roxanne Kuczynski about military sexual trauma. This will be a 2-part episode that'll be released this month in April. Please come back and check us out for that. And we also would just love to hear from you. So you can email me at sean@veteransbreakfastclub.org with any comments or suggestions. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining me for this episode today. And I do hope that you guys will all come back for another episode soon. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Scuttlebutt. I want to thank D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage for their generous support and sponsorship of this program. You can find their locations, get quotes, and ask about availability at D&Dautosalvage.com. That's D&Dautosalvage.com. We'll see you next week here on the Scuttlebutt.